My name is Ava, and growing up, the differences between my twin sister Mila and me were stark. Mila was the family star, always in the spotlight, while I lingered in the shadows. Our father, a strict university Aiden, was deeply engrossed in his academic pursuits, leaving little time for anything else. Our mother, the epitome of a devoted homemaker, was relentless in her efforts to mold us into perfect replicas of her ideal. Living at home felt like an endless session of criticisms. My parents had envisioned a perfect family, and that vision certainly didn't include a daughter who preferred band t-shirts and solitude. "Ava, why can't you be more like your sister?" was a frequent refrain from my mother, especially when I dared to wear my headphones at breakfast as a shield from the world. Mila thrived under their praise, always meeting their expectations with ease. "I just don't understand why it's so hard for you to put on a nice dress and smile," she would say, her voice laced with annoyance as she flipped her perfect hair dismissively. One Saturday, as we prepared for one of my father's tedious faculty parties, a mandatory but dull affair, I decided to make a small stand. I applied my darkest eyeliner and donned boots that were far from what was considered appropriate. My mother caught me on the stairs, her eyes darting to my boots with disdain. "You're not going out like that, are you?" she asked, her tone heavy with disapproval. I shrugged, my go-to defense. "Don't see why not," I replied nonchalantly. She sighed, that long, exasperated sigh that branded me as the family's greatest letdown. "Please, Ava, just this once, can't you try to fit in?" she pleaded. "For what? So you can pretend we're the perfect family?" I retorted, weary of the constant pretense. "It's not about pretending. It's about showing respect for your father," she countered sharply, her voice rising with urgency. Mila, overhearing our exchange, chimed in as she clicked her way authoritatively down the hall. "Mom's right, Liz. It's not that hard to look decent. Why do you always have to make things difficult?" "Maybe I don't want to be a clone of you, Mila," I snapped back, my frustration boiling over. I detested these confrontations and the constant comparisons. Just then, our father appeared at the foot of the stairs, his expression stern. "Enough," he commanded firmly. "Ava, go change now. We're leaving in 19 minutes. His authoritative tone left no room for argument. He didn't need to raise his voice. The disappointment in his eyes said it all, pressing down on me like a heavy weight. Marching back to my room, I reluctantly swapped my boots for bland flats and removed half of my eyeliner. The car ride to the party was filled with an eerie silence, broken only by the classical music my father played to calm his nerves. I gazed out the window, watching the trees blur by, and made a silent vow to myself. Someday, I'd live a life where no one could dictate my clothes, my behavior, or my identity. I'd be free from the crushing weight of these expectations. My room was my sanctuary, the only space in our house where I felt I could breathe. Unlike the rest of our meticulously arranged home, my room reflected my own choices. It was adorned with sketches and music posters, a small rebellion against the order outside its walls. It was here that I could escape, even if just momentarily, from my family's relentless standards. One evening, lost in the melodies of my favorite bands, my father barged in, his expression clouded with disapproval. "Ava, turn that noise down. And why haven't you been studying with Mila? You both have exams coming up," he demanded, his tone stern. I removed one earbud, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been studying, just not with Mila. I learn better alone," I replied. He shook his head, clearly skeptical. "You know the rules. Your sister gets good grades, and you should be doing the same. Why must you always complicate things?" "It's not about complicating things," I countered, my frustration mounting. "I just don't see why I must follow Mila's way of doing everything. Can't I have my own study method?" He didn't answer, instead shifting his focus. "And those friends of yours? I saw you with them at the cafe yesterday. They're not a good influence. You should be spending time with the daughters of my colleagues. They're more suitable." My temper flared. "Suitable for what? For you? Because they talk about economics and pretend to enjoy those dull university gatherings?" Before he could respond, my mother appeared at the doorway, her tone just as sharp. Ava, your father is right. Those girls come from good families. They know how to behave. They're the kind of friends you should want. I stood up, facing them both. What if I don't want friends who are chosen for me? What if I want to choose my own friends? Choose my own path? My voice echoed slightly in the small room, a stark reminder of the divide between us. What I study or even what I want to be, that's enough, Ava, my mom declared, her tone leaving no room for debate. You know your future is with the university. Your father has ensured that. And after you graduate, you'll need to start thinking about settling down. We've already discussed this. Settling down? The words lingered in the air, feeling like a verdict on my life. You mean start thinking about being someone's wife? Like Mila? Is that all you see for me? Mom's expression softened, but her voice remained resolute. We want what's best for you. Following the path we've laid out will give you a good life. A good life? I echoed, the words tasting sour. Is it really a good life if it's just someone else's idea of good? No one responded. They didn't have to. The silence was answer enough. They had their plans and they expected me to conform, just like Mila had. Mila and I were like two sides of the same coin, always together, yet never truly aligning. At university, where Dad taught, our differences became even more pronounced. She thrived in marketing manager, the golden child, always engaging in lectures and impressing Aiden with her insightful questions. Meanwhile, I felt like I was constantly wearing a shoe on the wrong foot, awkward, uncomfortable, and utterly misplaced in the same program. One afternoon, as I sat surrounded by a mountain of textbooks in the library, Mila breezed in, her notes impeccably organized and her smile poised. Hey Liz, you coming to the study group tonight? Aiden mentioned he's dropping by. It could be good for us to show face, she said, her voice light yet pressing. I looked up, weighed down by the expectation in her words. No, I don't think so. Those events aren't really my scene, you know? She frowned, placing her books down with a thud that echoed her disapproval. It's not about it being your scene, Liz. It's about making the right impressions. You need to start taking this seriously. We're graduating soon. I shrugged, turning back to my notes. I am taking it seriously, just not in a way that makes me miserable. Why bother pretending? Because, Liz, sometimes you have to play the game to get ahead. You think I enjoy all this? She gestured around at her perfectly tabbed textbooks and color-coded notes. It's not about liking it, it's about doing what's necessary. Her words hung between us, a stark reminder of the different worlds we inhabited, even as we shared the same spaces. What's necessary? I shook my head, pushing back my chair with a loud scrape. Well, maybe I'm tired of doing what's necessary, according to everyone else. Did you ever think of that? My voice carried a mix of fatigue and defiance. Mila's expression softened slightly, though her eyes remained resolute. Liz, I'm just trying to look out for you. Dad's not going to be around to sort things out forever. What are you going to do if you keep alienating everyone? Maybe I'll figure it out on my own. Maybe I don't need to follow Dad's roadmap or yours, I shot back, feeling a surge of independence. Mila sighed, her frustration evident. You're so stubborn. Just try, okay? For me, if not for yourself. Show up tonight. Talk to Aiden. It won't kill you. I looked at her, really looked, and saw not just my annoyingly perfect sister, but someone who actually cared in her own way. Fine. I'll think about it. Thank you, she said, her smile returning. It's not that bad, you know. You might even like it if you gave it a chance. Doubt it, I muttered, though a part of me knew I'd lost this round. For Mila, I'd show up, sit through another discussion, and nod at the right times. It was just a few hours, I told myself. How bad could it be? As it turned out, it wasn't as bad as I thought. Aiden was surprisingly engaging when he wasn't lecturing from a podium. I even found myself asking a question, which earned a shocked but pleased look from Mila. Later, as we walked back to our dorm, Mila nudged me. See? Not so terrible, right? That fragile peace didn't last long, however. In our last year, Mila introduced us to her fiancé, a lawyer 10 years her senior, well-established, and exactly what our parents had hoped for. Mom and Dad were thrilled, praising Mila for making such a smart match, and then immediately turned their expectant eyes on me. "Now, Ava, it's your turn to find someone suitable," Dad said one evening over dinner, his tone implying that my time was running out. Mom nodded enthusiastically, already planning my life as if it were another one of her well-organized home projects. "Think about your future, dear. Someone who can provide for you, who has a good standing." I remember staring at my plate, feeling the walls closing in. Mila's wedding was meticulously planned by Mom, from the bridesmaid dresses to the floral arrangements, showcasing her perfect vision of family prestige. After the wedding, Mom often visited Mila, doling out advice and ensuring her life played out just as she had orchestrated. Witnessing this, I knew one thing for certain. I needed to find my own way, far from the path they had set for me. I didn't want my life tailored by someone else's hands. One day, as I was walking down the street, lost in thoughts of escaping the life my parents envisioned for me, I heard the deep rumble of a motorcycle approaching. Curiosity drew me toward the sound, and that's when I saw him, Julian, with his leather jacket and carefree smile, pulling up beside me. "You look like you need a ride," he called over the roar of the engine, a playful twinkle in his eyes. I hesitated, glancing back towards the path home, then at his outstretched hand. What did I have to lose? "Sure, why not?" I replied, my voice a mix of nerves and excitement. Climbing onto the back of his bike, I felt a rush of adrenaline as we sped away. The wind whipped through my hair, and for the first time in a long time, I laughed a genuine, carefree laugh. Julian shouted something about showing me his world, and I held on tighter, not wanting the moment to end. We stopped at a diner frequented by bikers. Over burgers and fries, Julian told me about his life as a welding, his passion for bikes, and his love for the open road. It was so different from anything I was used to, raw and real. "Don't you get scared living like this?" I asked, my voice barely audible over the clatter of plates and chatter around us. "Scared? No, it's thrilling. You never know what's around the corner. Isn't that better than having everything planned out for you?" he replied, his eyes lighting up with each word. Over the next few weeks, we met secretly. Each ride on Julian's motorcycle pulled me further from the life I was supposed to live and closer to the life I wanted. The speed and adventure weren't just about the thrill, they were about feeling alive, feeling free. One evening, as we watched the sunset from a secluded overlook, Julian turned to me. "Ava, I don't just ride to escape. I ride to feel alive, to make every moment count. With you, every moment feels like it's worth something." I leaned into him, my heart beating fast. "I've never felt like this before. You make me feel free, Julian." He smiled, pulling me closer. "Then let's not go back to just existing. Let's live." 7 months with Julian felt like a lifetime of moments I'd always dreamed of. The day he proposed under the stars, with the gentle rumble of his bike in the background, my heart screamed yes before my mouth could form the word. It was perfect, except for one looming hurdle: my parents. I wrestled with the fear of introducing Julian to them. He was everything they disapproved of: his rough edges, his wild spirit, his simple yet content life as a welding. But love bolstered my courage, and I decided it was time they knew. The day I brought Julian home, he was dressed as usual, in his leather jacket and jeans. I could see the apprehension in his eyes, but he stood tall, ready to face whatever came our way. Julian wore a leather vest, black t-shirt, ripped jeans, and a bandana, unapologetically himself. As we walked up the driveway, I could already feel the weight of my parents' judgment. Inside, Mom's face went pale, her eyes wide with shock. "What in the world, Ava?" she gasped. Dad's reaction was harsher. "Who is this? And why is he dressed like a thug in our house?" I took a deep breath. "Mom, Dad, this is Julian. He's the man I love. We're getting married." Their silence was deafening. Dad turned to Julian, his voice dripping with disdain. Married? What do you do for a living, young man? What are your qualifications? Julian, bless him, stood firm. I'm a welding. I took specialized courses after high school. I work hard and make an honest living. My parents' faces showed a mix of horror and disbelief. A welding, Ava? You can't be serious. Mom's voice wavered, her face pale. Dad's anger flared. You expect us to give our blessing to this? To throw away your future for a welding? I felt my resolve harden. Yes, because he makes me happy. Isn't that what should matter? But the life you'll lead, Mom started, her voice trembling. It will be the life I choose, I shot back, my voice gaining strength. Dad shook his head, his decision clear. We cannot and will not support this. If you choose him, don't expect to be a part of this family. The finality in his tone broke my heart, but not my decision. Julian squeezed my hand, giving me the strength to face them. Then I choose Julian. I choose us. I choose my happiness. Mom's eyes filled with tears, and Dad's jaw clenched tight. Walking away from my parents' house with Julian, my heart was a mess of emotions, pain, relief, excitement, and fear all mixed into one. The night air felt different, like each breath I took was a step further into a new life. We rode in silence for a while, the steady roar of the motorcycle beneath us the only sound. When we finally stopped at a small diner on the outskirts of town, Julian turned to me, his face serious. You sure about this, Ava? I mean, really sure. There's no going back after tonight, he said, his eyes searching mine for any hint of doubt. I nodded, squeezing his hand tightly. I've never been more sure of anything. Being with you feels right. It feels like home. Julian smiled, pulling me into a hug. Then let's make this our home. Together. As we sat in the diner, talking about our future, I realized that this was the life I wanted, unplanned, uncertain, but mine. It wasn't the life my parents had envisioned, but it was real and filled with possibilities. And that was enough for me. He smiled that reckless, charming smile that had won me over the first day we met. All right then, let's do it. Let's start our life together. Inside the diner, we found a quiet booth in the corner. The waitress brought over 3 coffees without asking, and we sat there, planning our next steps. So, what's first? I asked, stirring cream into my coffee and watching it swirl and blend. We'll need to find a place to stay, at least for a while, then maybe look for jobs. I have some buddies who can help us get started, Julian replied, his tone practical but optimistic. It's going to be tough, isn't it? I said, more as a statement than a question, as the reality of what we were doing began to sink in. Julian reached across the table, his hand covering mine. It might be, but we'll handle it together. Tough is nothing new for either of us, right? I couldn't help but laugh, a short, sharp burst of genuine amusement. Right. Together. We spent hours in that diner, talking and planning. Every so often, Julian would throw out an idea that sounded so wild and free that it made my heart jump. And maybe one day we'll save enough to take that road trip across the country, just you, me, and the open road. I like that, I said, allowing myself to dream bigger than I had ever dared. Riding back into the city, we began our search. The next weeks were a blur of activity. We found a small apartment on the edge of town, nothing fancy. But it was ours. Julian found work at a local garage, and I picked up shifts at a nearby diner. Life was hard, but it was ours. We made do with what we had, and every night, when we came home to each other, it felt like we had everything. Months later, we decided it was time to make it official and got married in a small, intimate ceremony. I held on to a sliver of hope that my family would show up, that they would see how happy I was and let go of their prejudices. But the chairs reserved for them remained empty, and no congratulatory messages came. Despite the sting of their absence, the day was perfect because it was ours. Over time, I grew incredibly close to Julian's mom. She welcomed me with open arms, calling me her daughter, and filling in the gaps left by my own family. Her warmth and acceptance healed some of the wounds left by my parents' rejection. Things were finally looking up for Julian and me. After he completed additional diving training and became a certified underwater welding, his income shot up to $177,000 a year. That change made a world of difference. We managed to buy our first home, a small but cozy house with a backyard perfect for summer barbecues and stargazing at night. Our life was simple but filled with love and freedom, the very things I had always longed for. And as we built our future together, I knew that choosing Julian, choosing us, was the best decision I had ever made. We bought a townhouse in a nice area, the kind of place I had always dreamed about but never thought I'd actually live in. I started working as a dispatcher in Julian's company. It wasn't just a job, it felt like I was part of something important, supporting the man I loved and building our future together. On weekends, we would escape the city on his bike, roaring through winding roads and taking in breathtaking views of nature. Those moments, with the wind in my hair and his warmth against my back, were pure bliss. Living nearby, my mother-in-law became a frequent visitor. One afternoon, while Julian was tinkering in the garage and I was fixing us some coffee, she arrived looking a bit troubled. "There's been some ugly news," she said as she settled down at the kitchen table. Something about Aiden at the university involved in a harassment scandal. My heart skipped a beat. "Oh, did they say who it was?" I tried to keep my voice steady, dreading the answer. She shook her head. "No, they didn't mention a name on the radio, but you know how these things go. It's probably all over the TV by now." Nodding, I turned on the television and tuned into the news. Sure enough, there was a report on the scandal, and as I had feared, my father's face appeared on the screen. The anchor detailed the accusations against him, and I felt a cold wave of disbelief wash over me. Turning off the TV, I sat down heavily, trying to process the news. Julian came in, wiping his hands on a rag, and saw my face. "What's wrong, babe?" he asked, his brow furrowed in concern. I swallowed hard, my voice barely a whisper. "It's my dad. He's been accused of harassing a student." Julian's expression hardened for a moment before he came over and took my hand. "I'm sorry, Ava. That's tough news. How do you want to handle this?" I shook my head, feeling lost. "I don't know. I mean, what can I even do? It's not like we're close anymore." He squeezed my hand, his eyes filled with understanding. "Whatever you need, I'm here for you. We don't have to figure it all out right now." I decided to wait and see how things unfolded before making any moves. Whatever decision I made, I knew I'd have Julian by my side, and that was the reassurance I needed to face whatever came next. Life had been peaceful until that unexpected afternoon at work, when a familiar car pulled into the parking lot. It was my mother's car, and my heart sank as I watched her step out, looking around as if searching for something or someone. Taking a deep breath, I walked outside to meet her. "Mom, what are you doing here?" She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of anger and desperation. "Ava, we need to talk about your father." I braced myself for what was sure to be a difficult conversation. "All right, let's talk." We found a quiet spot, and she began to speak, her words tumbling out in a rush as she tried to explain, justify, and seek my support all at once. As I listened, I realized that this was my moment of truth. I had to decide where my loyalties lay, and how much of my old life I was willing to reconcile with my new one. But with Julian's unwavering support, I knew I could face whatever came next. We would navigate these challenges together, just as we had faced every other obstacle. This was my life now, and I was determined to live it on my terms. I hadn't seen my parents in a long while, and their sight stirred up emotions I thought I had buried. They looked dramatically changed. The scandal had taken its toll. Mom had lost a lot of weight and looked years older, while Dad appeared broken, a shadow of the stern man he once was. When my mother spotted me, she rushed over with open arms, as if nothing had happened, as if years of distance and disapproval could be bridged in an instant. But I couldn't embrace her, not now. Instead, I stepped back and took Julian's hand, finding strength in his presence. "Ava, It was so hard to find you, Mom said, her voice cracking with emotion. Dad, ever the gruff one, cut to the chase with a harsh, bitter voice. I was accused unfairly, you know. I went to your sister's husband for help, but that bloodsucker wanted a fortune. Your sister sided with him, and now they've kicked us out. We need your help. I stared at them, disbelief and anger swirling inside me. Help? After all these years, you show up and demand help? We have nowhere else to go. Mom's voice was desperate. They've disowned us too. We thought maybe we could stay with you. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Stay with me? After you disowned me? You made it clear I wasn't your daughter anymore. Dad's face turned red, his old temper flaring up. You owe us, Ava, after all we've done for you. That's where you're wrong, I interrupted, feeling Julian squeeze my hand in support. I don't owe you anything. You threw me out because I chose my happiness over your demands. And now you want to just move in and pretend like we're a family? The situation was spiraling, and I could see people watching, a crowd beginning to form. Mom started to cry, her sobs loud and attracting even more attention. You're being ungrateful after everything we've done for you, she accused through her tears. I took a deep breath, my decision clear. No, Mom, I'm not ungrateful. I'm free and happy. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them. As we walked away, I heard my dad yelling, but Julian leaned over and quietly told the security team, don't let them come here again. The following months flew by, filled with love and peace. We welcomed a son, marking a new beginning in our growing family. My parents never came back. That day in the parking lot was the last I saw of them. While part of me grieved for what could have been, I knew I had made the right choice for me and my family.